Some bonds are timeless, and the story of a mother and her son is one of them. This is the tale of a final goodbye that was, in truth, a new beginning. A mother who lived every moment of her life for her son, and a son who carried her love to change the world. Today, I will share with you a story that will break your heart and heal it too. And if you love powerful, life-changing stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because here you'll find stories that touch the soul and inspire the mind. Let's begin. When I close my eyes and think of my childhood, one image always comes back to me. My mother's smile. It wasn't the kind of smile you see in photographs, posed and perfect. It was a tired smile, sometimes worn down by long nights of work, but it carried a warmth that could light up my entire world. For me, she was not just a parent. She was my universe. Every morning, before the sun rose, she would gently wake me up. Her voice was soft, almost like a song, and I would feel safe knowing that no matter how uncertain the world outside was, inside our small home, I had her love protecting me. We didn't have much. Our house was simple, our meals were modest, and our clothes were often hand-me-downs. But my mother had a way of making everything feel rich. She would say, "Son, wealth is not measured by what you own, but by how much love you give." And I believed her, because even in the hardest times, she gave me more love than I could ever measure. I remember the mornings when she would prepare breakfast, sometimes just bread and tea, but she served it with such care that it felt like a feast. She would iron my school uniform even when her hands were rough and tired from sewing clothes late into the night. She wanted me to walk into school with dignity, even if the world didn't know how hard she worked to make it possible. At night, when I came home, she would ask me about my day. She listened to every detail, no matter how small. If I told her about a math problem I solved, her eyes would shine as if I had won a great prize. If I told her about a friend who hurt me, she would hold me close and remind me that kindness is stronger than cruelty. She was my teacher, my protector, and my best friend. There were times when I noticed her exhaustion. I would see her sitting quietly, her eyes heavy, her body aching. But the moment she saw me, she would straighten up, smile, and ask if I was hungry. She never let me feel the weight of her struggles. She carried them alone, silently, so that I could carry only my dreams. And oh, how she believed in my dreams. She would tell me, "Son, you are meant to do great things. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I didn't fully understand what she meant back then, but her words planted seeds in my heart, seeds of courage, seeds of hope, seeds of resilience. Looking back now, I realize that my childhood was not defined by poverty or hardship. It was defined by her love. Every sacrifice she made, every sleepless night, every moment of pain. She turned it into strength for me. She was building me, shaping me, preparing me for a future I couldn't yet see. And I, as her son, carried those lessons with me. Even as a child, I knew that my mother was extraordinary, not because she had wealth or fame, but because she had the power to turn suffering into love and love into strength. This is where our story begins, with a mother who gave everything, and a son who would one day realize that her sacrifices were the foundation of his entire life. Life has a way of changing in an instant. One moment, everything feels normal, and the next, the ground beneath your feet disappears. For me, that moment came the day the doctor looked at us and said the words I never wanted to hear. "Your mother is very sick." I remember staring at him, refusing to believe it. My heart screamed, "No, this cannot be true." But my mother? She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She simply smiled, a gentle, knowing smile, and said, "Son, every chapter of life has its time. Don't be afraid of endings, because they are also beginnings." At first I was angry at fate, angry at the world, angry at myself for not being able to protect her. I would sit alone at night, asking, why her? Why the one person who gave everything for me? But whenever I looked into her eyes, I saw no fear. I saw strength. And slowly I realized she wasn't teaching me how to live without her. She was teaching me how to live with her lessons forever. Even in pain, she gave me wisdom. She would say, "Success is not measured by money, but by the lives you touch." She reminded me that kindness is stronger than ambition, and that love is the only legacy worth leaving behind. There were nights when I sat by her hospital bed, holding her hand, listening to her stories. She spoke about her childhood, her dreams, the sacrifices she made. And then she said something that changed me forever. "Son, I may not be here to see all your milestones, but I want you to feel me in every step you take." One evening, she gave me a small box. Inside were letters, sealed carefully, each marked with a moment in my future: graduation, marriage, fatherhood, success, failure. She said, "Whenever you reach these moments, open a letter. My words will guide you, even when I cannot." I held that box like it was treasure, because it was. It was her voice, her love, her presence, captured in ink and paper. Watching her fight illness was the hardest thing I have ever done. But even in weakness, she was strong. Even in pain, she was graceful. She showed me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to keep smiling, even when life hurts. And so, I began to understand. This was not just about losing her. This was about gaining the wisdom she wanted to leave behind. She was preparing me, shaping me, guiding me, for a life where her love would always be my compass. There comes a moment in every story when silence speaks louder than words. For me, that moment was the day my mother took her final breath. I sat beside her, holding her hand, praying for more time. But deep inside, I knew this was her last gift to me. Her eyes met mine, weak but full of love. She whispered one word: proud. And then, with a gentle smile, she closed her eyes forever. In that instant, my world shattered. I felt as if the air had been stolen from my lungs, as if the ground beneath me had disappeared. I was no longer just a son. I was a man standing alone, carrying the weight of her dreams. The days that followed were heavy. The house felt empty, the silence unbearable. I would wake up expecting to hear her voice, but all I found was quiet. Yet, in that quiet, I discovered something extraordinary. Her presence was still with me. In the lessons she taught, in the letters she left, in the love she had poured into my soul. The first letter I opened was on my graduation day. She had written, "Son, you have fulfilled my dream. Walk proudly, but walk humbly. Remember, your success is not yours alone. It is built on the sacrifices of those who loved you." Reading those words, I felt her standing beside me, cheering me on. Another letter came when I faced failure. She wrote, "Do not fear failure, my child. It is not the end, but the beginning of wisdom. Every fall teaches you how to rise stronger." Her words gave me courage when I thought I had none left. And so, her letters became my guide. Each one opened at the right time, each one carrying her voice across the distance between life and death. They reminded me that love does not end with goodbye. Love continues, shaping, guiding, inspiring. I decided to honor her legacy. I built a foundation in her name, dedicated to helping children who, like me, needed hope. Every child who studied, every dream that grew, felt like a continuation of her spirit. Through them, she lived on. Years passed, but her lessons never faded. Whenever I faced a choice, I asked myself, what would my mother want me to do? And the answer was always the same. Choose kindness, choose courage, choose love. The last goodbye was not truly the end. It was a transformation. My mother's life became a story that I carried forward, a story that touched others, a story that proved that even in loss, there is light. And today, as I share this with you, I realize her voice still echoes in mine, her love still guides my steps, and her goodbye was never a goodbye at all. It was a promise that she would live forever, through me. Grief is a strange companion. It doesn't knock before entering, and once it arrives, it refuses to leave. After my mother's passing, Silence filled every corner of my life. The house felt empty, the mornings felt endless, and nights became heavier than I could bear. I would wake up expecting to hear her voice, her footsteps, her gentle humming in the kitchen. But all I found was silence. At first, that silence felt cruel. It reminded me of what I had lost. But slowly, I began to realize that silence also carried something else. It carried her presence. In the quiet, I could still hear her words. In the stillness, I could still feel her love. I started speaking to her in my mind. I told her about my day, about the mistakes I made, about the small victories I achieved. I asked her questions I knew she would answer with kindness. And in those moments, the silence transformed. It stopped being empty and became sacred, like a space where her spirit still lived. Her letters continued to guide me. One was marked, "For when you feel weak." Inside she wrote, "My son, strength is not about hiding your pain. Strength is about carrying it with honesty and still choosing to move forward. Do not be ashamed of your tears. They are proof of your love." Reading those words, I let myself cry. And for the first time, the tears felt healing, not hopeless. I began to notice small lights in my days, a stranger's smile, a friend's message, a moment of peace after a storm of thoughts. These weren't grand achievements, but they reminded me that life still held warmth. My mother had always celebrated small victories, and now I understood why. Grief didn't disappear. It never does. But I learned to carry it differently. I stopped fighting it and started listening to it. I realized grief is not the opposite of love. It is the shadow of love. It exists because love was real, because love was deep, because love mattered. And so, I made a promise to myself. I would not let grief define me. I would let love define me. I would live in a way that honored her sacrifices, her wisdom, her endless devotion. I would carry her forward, not as a memory that fades, but as a legacy that grows. The silence remained, but it no longer felt cruel. It became a reminder that she was still with me, not in body, but in spirit. And every time I whispered, "I miss you, Mom," I felt her answer in the quiet, "I am still here, my son." Always. Grief teaches you patience. It doesn't leave quickly, and it doesn't fade easily. But over time, I began to understand that grief is not only about loss, it is also about love. The deeper the love, the deeper the grief. And so, I chose to let my grief remind me of how much she meant to me, instead of only reminding me of what I had lost. I started to live differently. Every morning, I would whisper a quiet prayer, thanking her for the day ahead. I remembered how she used to say, "Begin each day with gratitude, and you will never feel poor." Those words became my ritual. Her letters continued to guide me. One was marked, "For when you feel strong again." Inside she wrote, "My son, strength is not about forgetting me. Strength is about remembering me and still moving forward. Carry me in your choices and I will live through you." Reading those words gave me courage. I realized that moving forward was not betrayal. It was the greatest way to honor her. At work, I began to lead with compassion. I listened more, judged less, and tried to be the kind of person she believed I could be. With friends, I offered support, even when I was tired, because she had always given without hesitation. With strangers, I practiced kindness, because she had taught me that kindness is the only gift that multiplies when shared. Slowly, I began to see her in everything. In the laughter of children, I saw her joy. In the resilience of people struggling, I saw her strength. In the quiet moments of reflection, I felt her wisdom. She was gone, but she was everywhere. One day, I opened another letter. It was marked, "For when you doubt yourself." She wrote, "Son, doubt is natural, but remember I never doubted you. I saw greatness in you when you couldn't see it yourself. Trust my vision until you find your own." Those words became my anchor. Whenever fear tried to hold me back, I remembered her faith in me, and I stepped forward. I realized that grief had given me a choice, to close myself off or to open myself wider. I chose to open. I began volunteering at a shelter, helping children who had lost parents. I told them stories of my mother, stories of sacrifice, of resilience, of love. And in their eyes, I saw hope. In their smiles, I saw her legacy continuing. Grief had not ended my story. It had reshaped it. It had turned me into someone who understood pain, but also someone who understood healing. My mother's love had not vanished. It had transformed into the way I lived, the way I gave, the way I carried her forward. And so, I walked into each day with a new purpose, not to escape grief, but to honor love, not to forget her, but to remember her in every choice I made. The last goodbye was not the end. It was the beginning of a life defined by her love. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest pain. Years passed, and though the ache of losing my mother never disappeared, it transformed. It became a quiet strength, a reminder of the love that shaped me. Her letters continued to guide me through every milestone. When I married, I opened one marked, "For when you find love." She had written, "Son, love is not about perfection. It is about patience, forgiveness, and choosing each other every day. Treat your partner with the same devotion I gave you, and you will build a home filled with peace." Reading those words, I felt her blessing in my heart. When I became a father, another letter waited. She wrote, "Now you will understand me more deeply than ever. Parenthood is sacrifice, but it is also the purest joy. Teach your child not only to succeed, but to be kind. That will be your greatest gift." Holding my newborn, I realized she was right. In that moment, I felt her presence more strongly than ever, as if she was standing beside me, smiling. Her wisdom became my compass in every role I took on: son, husband, father, leader. And with each step, I carried her forward. I built a foundation in her name, helping children who needed hope. Every child who studied, every dream that grew, felt like a continuation of her spirit. Through them, she lived on. The last goodbye was not truly the end. It was a transformation. My mother's life became a story I carried forward, a story that touched others, a story that proved that even in loss, there is light. And today, as I share this with you, I realize her voice still echoes in mine. Her love still guides my steps. And her goodbye was never a goodbye at all. It was a promise that she would live forever, through me. So if you are listening now, and you have lost someone you love, remember this: grief is not the end of love. It is proof of love. Carry them forward in your choices, in your kindness, in your courage. Let their story live through you, because some bonds are timeless, and a mother's love is one of them.